On October 6th of 2022, HBO Max dropped a teaser for their new upcoming show, Velma. Saying that this trailer was disliked would be a bigger understatement than saying a neighborhood-sized pile-up was just a minor traffic jam. However, I am a fair guy and wanted to give this series a chance. So after watching it twice, while taking breaks to shower so I can cleanse myself of this filth and go to church to apologize for my sins, I discovered that HBO's Velma is the worst show that has ever been created. I don't mean the worst show on HBO Max or the worst animated series. Oh no. I mean the worst show ever. It's painfully unfunny, hates its target audience, and every character is so unlikable you end up rooting for the serial killer. It's a show that no one asked for, has become the third lowest rated show on IMDB, and was somehow hate-watched so much that it's getting a second season. So, how did this comedy spin-off of a classic franchise turn into the most painful viewing experience I've ever had to go through? Well, to understand that, y'all are gonna need some context.
Okay, Rich.
Velma is a spin-off of, you guessed it, Velma Dinkley from the Scooby-Doo franchise. This group of meddling kids consisting of Scooby, Shaggy, Daphne, Fred, and Velma have been around solving mysteries since 1969. As a result, the gang has been through many different interpretations, from the classic series to the more episodic storytelling of Mystery Incorporated, to aging them down to kids for some reason, and even having one of the best theme songs of the early 2000s, and I will fight you on that. My point being is that even over half a century of changes to the franchise, Velma still may be the most extreme. Some of the obvious ones being that Velma's now the main character, which is definitely an interesting choice, but could work with a good enough writing team. Every other member of the gang gets mild to extreme redesigns and shifts in their personalities. Oh, and there's no Scooby-Doo.
What?
Yeah, you know, the character who the franchise is literally named after is nowhere to be found. Interestingly enough, the creators actually explained their reasoning behind this decision during 2022's New York Comic Con.
Well, when we were going into the show and thinking about adapting it, we wanted to be respectful. We didn't want to just kind of take these beloved characters and put them in outrageous or gross situations and say, like, isn't it crazy we did that to Velma? So when we were thinking about what made it a kid show, what makes it an adult show, what made it a kid show was Scooby-Doo. That coincided with Warner Brothers Animation saying, hey, you can't use the dog. So we're like, great.
The irony of this statement is funnier than anything we see in Velma. You say Scooby is what made the series for kids. Meanwhile, you made the most childish adult animated comedy series I have ever seen. And when I call it a comedy, it's the loosest definition of the word. The jokes in Velma purely rely on meta humor, which is basically a joke within a joke. Okay, there are less jokes and more comments about jokes, and no, the show doesn't use them sparingly.
You look like a white influencer trying to choreograph her own dance instead of just stealing one.
The show just loves to hear itself explain every reference, every joke, at every opportunity. Meta humor is a lot like your ears when you're in a relationship. They need to be used sparingly, otherwise it could be detrimental to your health. But by having the sole form of comedy for your show being meta humor, it makes you fear for every time a character speaks, because it's only a matter of time before they sit you down to explain the joke's complete origin story. Hell, after watching the entire show, this scene was the only one that made me laugh.
How hard can watching it be, right, Norville? Norville?
Who wrote this? Who wrote this joke? Whoever did, promote them, make them the lead writer, I don't care, just do it. But you wanna know what's worse than meta humor? Meta humor that makes fun of your audience.
You know what 420 is, right?
Yeah. It's code for adults who still watch cartoons.
For the record, there's nothing wrong with comedy that pokes fun at your audience. But when it's a constant thing throughout the show, it comes across as more spiteful than playful. Like, it feels as if the characters actively hate the audience their show would appeal to. Now, I have a firm belief that you can make a joke about anything funny. However, there's one thing that you need to make sure you get right. Timing. Timing is essential for a joke to land properly. Knowing how many of a similar joke to tell and when is a skill. It's the difference between this and proceeds to beat it down faster than what I do in my spare time. And this. Velma has no sense of timing. Often jokes will just come out of nowhere with no sense of build-up. Or even if they do land, the writers end up using the same joke so much that it becomes more worn out than a spoiled kid's credit card or the rag I used throughout high school. For example, throughout the show, Fred is shown to be so incompetent that he's practically a toddler. And for a while, this was humorous. It's the only joke they make.
Ah, crap, I'm all syrupy. Bathies! Mother cutties! Ooh, bunk beds! Hoisties!
Like you're no longer beating a dead horse, you're eating the glue it was made into. Now, you may be thinking, okay Gio, so it's not keel over and die funny. I mean, I sit through your cringy jokes, so I think I'll be fine as long as the plot and characters are good. And to that I have to say, 1, harsh, and 2, if you surviving this show hinges on the characters and plot being well written, then you better start writing your will now, because they are so bad that I'm pretty sure the mere act of consuming the show killed off one of my last remaining brain cells. Now, in a comedy, the plot doesn't really matter. Oftentimes, it's just a vehicle that sparks certain character interactions. However, that usually works because the plot is pretty low stakes. But Velma tries to be a murder mystery, so you can't exactly have that going on in the background. The basic premise is that Velma is being framed for murdering one of her classmates and removing her brain. She eventually clears her name, but now there's a killer on the loose and it's somehow connected to Velma's mom's disappearance. These are some pretty high stakes, and you'd think that with the showrunners needing to make this more mature, the series will lead to more serialized storytelling, to where the Mystery Inc. crew slowly starts to come together and eventually solve this case. However, considering that the creators have less going on in their skulls than the Headless Horseman, it isn't a surprise that they didn't take this route. You would think the focus would be on the murder mystery, considering that it's the inciting incident of the show. But for some reason, the focus is on Velma trying to find out what happened to her mother. Now, I'm not saying that Velma's search can't be a major part of the story. However, you can't have something as high stakes as an active serial killer and put that plot point on the back burner. But Gio, they thought Fred did it, and he was arrested in episode 1. Yes, that did happen. And it makes no sense. For context, Velma learns that the girl who was murdered was last seen with Fred, so she breaks into his house searching for clues and ends up confronting him.
I haven't finished going through puberty yet. I'm a late bloomer, so we keep the secret hidden away to avoid embarrassment. Which is why Brenda left me no choice but the unthinkable.
But before Fred can do anything, he is stopped by the cops, and it's revealed that he wasn't going to kill Velma, just pay her off to keep his secret. All the evidence is there to exonerate Fred, including the fact that when Velma goes home, she and Norville find a second body. However, because everyone in this show has the mental capacity of an infant or a Jake Paul fan, the entire town believes that Fred is the killer. Hell, I'm pretty sure this is only done to give Velma the green light to just focus on finding her mother. On top of that, none of the characters' individual plot lines connect in any natural way. Daphne's trying to find her birth parents who turn out to be criminals, but that ends up being completely pointless. Fred, after getting exonerated, reads a book that makes him simp for Velma, and Norville, who was the original simp, has a story of him growing a backbone to stand up to Velma, only to immediately return to simping after one voicemail. Simp! None of these storylines flow into each other, and as a result, it makes the plot look like a jumbled mess of ideas. Funnily enough, I think there was a way that they could have made these individual stories connect. What if after Velma realizes that Fred is innocent, she feels guilty because in my version, she isn't a sociopath, that she is partially responsible for putting an innocent man in jail. So she tries her best on her own to prove his innocence by figuring out who the real killer is. But in order to do so, she needs the case file. So she goes and asks Daphne if she can get it from her cop moms. She initially refuses, as she has her own mystery to solve with who her birth parents are. but eventually agrees after Velma offers to help Daphne find her parents after they get Fred out of jail. Now, throughout this entire process, Velma and Daphne are slowly getting closer, but it results in Velma treating Norville worse. They eventually prove Fred's innocence, and as a sign of his gratitude, he offers to help them catch the killer. Daphne wants to finally begin searching for her parents now that Fred is free, but is convinced by Velma that exposing the killer is more important. The crew eventually finds a clue that links the killer to Velma's mom, and Velma becomes hyper-focused on this, turning this hunt for a killer into a search for her mom. This selfish action is the last straw for Daphne, so she snaps at Velma and leaves the group. Norville starts to finally get a backbone and leaves as well, and Velma, blaming everyone else, snaps at Fred, leaving him alone. However, Fred had started to really enjoy trying to solve this mystery with everyone, so one by one, he tries to convince them to come back, to no avail. As a result, Fred goes to investigate a clue on his own, and ends up getting captured. Velma can finally internalize what Fred said to her, and goes to apologize to the crew. And here we could have the crew come back together and save Fred, expose the villain, and look, my point being is that it could have worked. Throwing whatever idea you made while you were filing for divorce and losing custody of your kids at the wall to see what sticks wasn't your only option. Especially when that same philosophy gave us the worst villain reveal in Scooby-Doo history. Let me explain. In the show, Fred does actually get captured, and when the crew finds him, by pure luck, they end up also finding Velma's mother along with the brains of the previous murder victims. Eventually though, Velma's mom admits to being the murderer, but it's soon discovered that she was being hypnotized. On top of that, Daphne and Fred get captured by the killer, but are saved by Velma, because of course they are. And the killer is finally revealed to be, drumroll please, Fred's mom, Victoria.
Who?
Yeah, you know, Victoria. The one who was barely in the show until the last 2 episodes, and even then had absolutely no hints that she was the killer until the last episode tries to explain her motives.
That doesn't make sense.
For context, apparently the doctor that Velma's mom was looking into before she disappeared was once hired by a military general to pull a Freaky Friday swap via brains. After the general who hired her tried to take credit for the project, she reversed the procedure and hid the data. Fred's mom was the daughter of that military man, so after the data was gone, her dad was ruined. In order to not be poor, she married Fred's dad, grew his company, and after realizing that Fred was dumber than most single-celled organisms, she begins to search for the doctor's journals to give Fred a more competent brain so he doesn't burn the company to the ground. This reveal fails on 2 fronts, as a satisfying mystery and in making any amount of sense. One of the fun aspects of a mystery show is having all the pieces laid out for the audience. We should have just as much information as the characters do, so we can connect the dots with them. It's a huge advantage of the genre, and was the foundation of Scooby-Doo as a whole. Here, we are left completely in the dark, as Velma solves it off screen. And you know what? It'd be fine if the clue that she uncovers wasn't Victoria's connection to the general, as that is the piece that connects everything together. Actually, even then, all you had to do was give enough clues towards Victoria's involvement and connection throughout the show. Maybe a picture in Fred's house or some medals from the military, I don't know, just give me something to work with here. However, even if the mystery was perfectly executed, Victoria's plan makes as much sense as letting Stevie Wonder be your Uber driver. For one, why did you need to make these bodies known? The police are clearly incompetent in this town, so why not make it so that it looks like these kids have gone missing? At best, they become cold cases, and at worst, they become public kidnappings, which, to my recollection, leaves a lot less evidence than murders. But that is not even the most moronic part, because it turns out that Velma's mom found out what Victoria was doing. So Victoria hypnotized her to rebuild the doctor's lab, as well as Velma as a kid, so she would have a panic attack every time she tried to solve a mystery. Ignoring the fact that this means Velma went her entire life without hearing anyone snap their fingers, this all could have worked until you tried to frame Velma, which was the push she needed to try and solve mysteries again. Why would you do that? She was of no threat to you until you gave her a reason. How are you this dumb? I have a hard time believing you could actually put your shoes on in the morning, let alone grow a company. Are you that brain dead that you couldn't see this as a future problem? What the actual f***? Now, even though Velma is as funny as a white wall, even though the plot is all over the place, and even though the mystery is so stupid that it makes me want to drown myself in the tub, I will cut the show some slack if the characters are well written. This is extra important when it comes to writing for a comedy, as at the core of every good comedy show is fun characters that can play off of each other. And Velma may have the single most unlikable cast of characters ever to be aired. All of them are so selfish and mean-spirited. I don't think there was one instance in this show where these characters did anything good without expecting something in return, and they are all defined by one character trait. Don't believe me? You think I'm making this up? Well, let's do the mentally deficient roll call and find out for ourselves.
I think it has something to do with drugs, which I hate.
Norville, a complete simp for Velma, and tries throughout the entire show to gain her affection. He only helps her because he believes in the end he will get a relationship. That's right, Norville is an r/nice guy. Even after he gets into a new relationship with Gigi, someone who actually cares about him, he is incredibly selfish, never actually listens to her, and still simps for Velma. Then, when Norville finally gets a backbone after Velma accuses his dad of being the killer and destroying half his damn house, all it takes is one voicemail where Velma says, "I love you," for him to come in and save the day.
And I love you too!
Croak!
I need to find out who I really am.
Moving on to Daphne. At the start, while she does seem shallow, there are signs of her being a good person, like her giving Velma her mom's case file after feeling guilty of extorting her, and after finding out that her birth parents are criminals, still giving them a chance to make things right. However, after that idea crashes, burns, and takes out an orphanage, Daphne has nothing to do for the rest of the season. So, she simps for Velma. So much so that she tries to make her jealous so she can have all of Velma's attention. Her actions become solely dependent on whether or not they will make Velma want to bang her, making her the blandest character in the show.
This is gonna sound crazy, but I love danger.
Just go fall down a flight of stairs.
Hello, friends. My name is Fred.
Fred is the most annoying character in the show. He makes me want to commit several violations of the Geneva Convention. The show makes him a dumb, spoiled brat, but turns the annoyance up to 100. I mean, he can't even eat food by himself and is constantly talking like an infant.
Ooh, bunk beds. Hoisties.
The funny thing is that while Fred does do things purely for his own self-interest, he is the only character that has some kind of change. After he reads a book that completely changes what he finds attractive, he starts to, you guessed it, simp for Velma, because of course he does. But Velma obviously doesn't reciprocate. He does continue trying to win her over, but by the last episode, not only does he acknowledge her as just a friend, but also admits that he's glad that Velma will call him out when he's wrong, and even risk himself to protect them. Ain't that about a bitch? The character the writers clearly hate the most, the one that acts less mature than an embryo, is the only character who changes for the better by the end of the season.
Our family was also poor? Oh, can this day get any worse?
I still hope you get hit by a bus. And last and definitely least, Velma.
But I only see you when I need you as is. Finding Fred innocent would require me to admit I'd incorrectly prejudged someone. And I wanted you to finish the headline about me for the paper. Which, did you? Because I couldn't help but notice you had time for a board game.
Oh my brother in Christ. I hate this character. She is the most selfish, inconsiderate, spiteful, self-absorbed jack-off I have ever seen put to screen. Velma only will do something to help you if it benefits her. She will gladly help Daphne when she needs her mom's missing files, but when Daphne actually needs her support, she ignores her. She constantly takes Norville for granted, getting mad at him for not being at her beck and call after he starts dating Gigi, and proceeds to still treat him like dirt even after he bends over backwards trying to help her. Oh, and Fred. Let's not forget, she has so much of a problem with Fred only liking women for their body, but salivates at the idea of seeing him naked.
Yes, for me. I've dreamt about this moment. One time on an airplane, I was escorted off. It's not important. Think this through. Once my brain isn't Fred, I'll just go to the police right after I've looked at myself naked.
What the fuck is wrong with you?
Or the fact that Fred is clearly innocent at the start of the season, but she's perfectly okay with Fred taking the fall because it means that she won't get arrested, all because she just doesn't like him. But what makes all of this worse is that Velma doesn't get called out for any of this. Every character loves her, and she refuses to even admit when she is wrong. For Christ's sakes, after Victoria is killed, she literally twerks on her dead corpse. I can't make this up. It's ridiculous. I understand that this is a comedy, but all you are doing is making your main character one of the most vile, inconsiderate wastes of air I have ever seen. The fact that anyone on the creative team thought this was a good idea really needs to reevaluate their life decisions to where they thought that the audience would enjoy watching these miserable cretins. I find it funny when revealing this show, one of the creators stated that they wanted to treat these characters with respect, which was an obvious lie. I refuse to believe that anyone is so naive and think, oh yeah, they were treated with respect. HBO's Velma is what happens when a show is made with pure hate for the source material. I'm of the belief that adaptations don't need to be a one-to-one comparison. Changes are necessary sometimes to evolve a character, or when telling a story in a different media, and I will never blame a creator for wanting to try something new. However, no matter what you do, you cannot change the soul of the character. The Scooby Gang is a fun group of friends that each bring their own strengths to the table in pursuit to help others. But this show takes these characters and makes them unrecognizable. That is not Shaggy, that is not Daphne, that is not Fred, and that is certainly not Velma. It's really no surprise that this is the third lowest rated show on IMDB. Nothing is good. There is no silver lining, and I hope that the animators that worked on this show end up finding work after this, because they tried their best to give this show a unique style and deserve so much better. However, every writer should feel ashamed to have their name attached to this, because it's no mystery that Velma is one of the worst shows ever made. Anyway, I do hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know in the comment section down below. What do y'all think of Velma? Do you guys think it deserves to be the third lowest rated show on IMDb? Or do you think maybe I'm missing something? I mean, you'd be wrong, but still, comment how you feel about it. These past couple months have been kind of crazy. Like, first off, I like to apologize because clearly I am prone to promising the world and then not being able to deliver on that world. Just a lot of videos that I had planned ended up falling through the cracks. A lot of the work that I want to put into some of these videos, like I would like to put more time to the 3D modeling side of things, but then again, that ends up slowing down videos. And it's a weird balance that I've yet to find, even though I try to promise that I found it. It's very weird because I feel like I'm letting you guys down because I am kind of depriving you guys of content. And it's like, I question, am I working fast enough? Am I getting these videos out fast enough? Should I cut corners somewhere to get more out? It's a weird balance that I'm still trying to find. And the fact that some of y'all are still around supporting me, even though how much I just break a lot of my promises, is honestly makes me so grateful for the audience that I have, and I just want to thank you all for that. Which kind of makes this a weird segue when I say I got a Patreon now. Yes, I have a Patreon that's linked in the description down below. It goes live alongside this video. Again, going off of me saying promising the world. I've mentioned, like, I think last year, like, oh, I'm going to set up Patreon. Never got around to doing it. But no, an actual Patreon is now, I'll set it up. Don't feel like y'all have to go there to support me. Honestly, just the fact that you guys watching and sharing my videos is more than enough, but it's there if y'all are interested. Gonna have some limited time stuff up there before it goes live. Have some notes of my videos, some scripts. Just check it out if y'all are interested. Next video wise, I'm honestly kind of stumped between quite a few things, and I'm just hoping I can get them out in a reasonable amount of time, honestly. And yeah, just hope I can get them out. Like, there's no better way to put it. But I am really grateful that you guys still watch my stuff up there. You guys patiently wait for it. It's honestly really humbling. And yeah, just want to thank you guys for that. But enough of that. I think I've kept you guys here long enough. But genuinely, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you guys liked it and you're new to the channel, hit that like and the subscribe button. Also, if you think the channel potential, hit the same buttons. Anyway, my name is G.I.Gio, and I will talk to you all later. Peace.